We're here to bring a new type of news show.
New insight, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Bringing news just for you. It's Monday, December 15th here in Seoul. I'm Lee Soo-jin, and this is News Generation. Joining us today is Ki.
Good morning.
Good morning. Also Niles with us.
Happy to be here.
And both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. So it's Monday, the start of a brand new work week, and while we normally open with lighter topics, today we want to take a moment to address something more serious and refocus attention on an important story. A tragic fire in Hong Kong on November 26th made headlines around the world. So let's take a moment to look at where things stand now. So what's the latest on the situation there, Ki?
Right, so if you take a look at the confirmed fatalities officially so far, it's 160 people, including at least one firefighter was responding to the blaze. And if you take a look at age range of victims, aged from infants to 97-year-olds, and many bodies were found inside the apartments, stairwells, on corridors, suggesting residents were unable to escape as the fire spread so quickly. And by early December, authorities reported around 31 individuals were unaccounted for, and 24 of them were reported to be in care centers or to be found safe. Yet now 6 are found to be unknown about their whereabouts, and total reported injuries so far is 79 people, including residents and emergency responders, and the estate housed about 4,600 residents across the nearly 1,984 flats are pretty much refugee. The majority were displaced due to the destruction of 7 towers out of 8. And there's currently a criminal investigation going on. Police have made numerous arrests on suspicion of manslaughter and related charges tied to construction, renovation, and safety compliance features, and also anti-corruption probe. Hong Kong's Independent Commission Against Corruption was launched they launched a task force exploring whether improper practices or collusion in awarding and executing renovation contracts contributed to safety lapse.
So it's good to hear that there are many different efforts that are underway. Do you have anything else to add to about what's the latest that's happening?
Right. This fire, unfortunately, is the deadliest incident in Hong Kong in 77 years since the Hong Kong warehouse fire in 1948. Hong Kong authorities declared a 3-day official mourning period starting on the 29th. And so far, there have been moments of silence, and they were observed for the victims, and memorial altars have been set up across the city.
Right, so we're going to talk more about this, but first, let's take a look at the screen. The massive fire that broke out in late November at a large residential estate in Hong Kong drew international concern, not only because of the sheer scale of the disaster, but because it became one of the city's deadliest fires in decades. The flames spread rapidly along the exterior of the complex, raising global questions about safety standards in high-rise construction and renovation. So today on News Generation, we take a closer look at why this tragedy escalated so quickly and what lessons countries like South Korea can take from it when it comes to strengthening building safety and disaster preparedness. So as we just saw in the video, the fire revealed how quickly things can escalate when safety measures fall short and why this incident has sparked wider concern. And it really raises a question of what allowed the flames to sweep through the complex so fast despite this being a major residential estate. So Ki, what do we know about the factors that caused the fire to spread so rapidly?
Sure. Authorities have not yet released a final determination on what ignited the fire. The 42-year-old apartment complex had been undergoing remodeling work since last year, and its exterior was covered with the plastic safety netting and polystyrene insulation, and it was wrapped in bamboo scaffolding and external mesh. And some of these materials are believed to have failed fire retardant standards, allowing flames to climb rapidly up building exteriors, and there were reports of malfunction or delayed fire alarm systems, which may have slowed down the evacuation, and strong winds at the time further accelerate the spread of fire and smoke. And as a result, serious concerns have been raised over safety standards and oversight during renovation work.
Right, so the renovation materials themselves ended up accelerating the fire, which really shows how critical proper safety oversight is during construction. So now then, what about the layout of this housing complex? How did that impact people's ability to get out or just control the fire?
Hong Kong is actually one of the most densely populated places in the world, and these so-called cage apartments, the housing structure is actually being cited as one of the factors that worsened the fire. The complex consisted of very small units with very narrow spacing. Many of the residents were very elderly, some even over the age of 65, making it very difficult to escape. And despite it being a very highly vulnerable to fire environment, the residents testified that safety management was very inadequate, and including the reports that some of the fire alarms did not actually sound.
So it was a combination of various factors: density, aging residents, and malfunctioning alarms. It really shows how fragile the safety net was. And in a place like Hong Kong, where this happened, like every second mattered at this time. So to understand this more fully, we'll be talking with someone who's been right at the center of what's happening in Hong Kong. So that interview is coming right after the break, so don't go anywhere.
NewsGen wants to hear from you. Go to YouTube and search out Channel Arirang News. Click Posts and cast your vote in the poll. Make a new type of news with us.
Joining us today is YK Tak, who's lived in Hong Kong for more than 30 years and is a chairman of the Korean Residents Association Hong Kong. So hello, thank you so much for connecting with us today.
Hi, this is YK Tak, chairman of Korean Residents Association. I'm happy to be here on Arirang TV.
We're also very honored that you joined us today. So what is the situation on the ground right now, and how would you describe the overall mood in Hong Kong following the fire?
Okay, a fire broke out, as you know, at 32-story, 41-years-old residential buildings in Hong Kong on November 26. The immediate rescue and firefighting operations have conducted. As of December 14, 160 people died, 79 injured, and out of 79, 49 went back home after treatment, and 30 in hospital. 6 are critical, and 24 are stable, and 6 are still missing. It is the largest death toll in Hong Kong's history. And the focus has shifted to securing the scene and conducting thorough investigation. Hong Kong authorities and emergency services responded promptly to the incident. The overall mood in Hong Kong can be one of profound sadness, mourning, and sympathy for the victims. The initial reaction was dominated by shock, and now the public discourse is increasingly centered on questions of why this happened and urgent calls for systemic improvements to prevent future disasters.
So you sort of answered towards the end of your first question. So how have residents been processing this tragedy, and what are the conversations that's actually floating in Hong Kong?
Okay, residents are processing the tragedy in several ways. Firstly, mourning and memorials. Makeshift memorials have set near the site and in public squares, with many citizens laying flowers, expressing their condolences, showing community solidarity. Secondly, sport fundraising. There's a powerful sense of solidarity, with many people donating and offering emotional support to the victims' families. Korean community also started fundraising right after the day the fire broke out under the Korean Residents Association Hong Kong. We raised over $500,000 Hong Kong dollars. It's about 65,000 US dollars. It is very important and meaningful. There are a lot of companies, organizations, churches, schools, and individuals who took part in this campaign, but no civilian associations participated, like the Korean community. It is our strong touching point that gives our hands to the neighbors who are in need, who are in a difficult situation. This is care, compassion, benevolence, love, real communication and consideration to others, which makes the world worth living together. I had an interview with a local Hong Kong newspaper last week. The reporter said it was a very touching story that the Korean community showed across borders solidarity to Hong Kong. Lastly, social debate. Fire has become a focal point in news and social media every day. driving intense public conversation.
Thank you so much for telling us what's happening in Hong Kong right now, how people are coping. You mentioned some systematic changes are in order earlier, and I would like to ask, from your perspective, what needs to change to prevent a disaster like this from happening again?
Preventing a recurrence requires a multifaceted and systemic approach. I want to make 3 points here. The first, proactive and stringent building safety enforcement. Implement a mandatory, regular, and rigorous fire safety inspection system for all residential, industrial, and commercial buildings with strict penalties and follow-up actions for violations. And clarify and strengthen the legal responsibilities of building owners and managers for maintaining all safety installations like fire extinguishers, alarms, emergency lighting, smoke extraction systems. And number 2, community awareness and education. Conduct regular fire prevention, evacuation drills, and equipment training for tenants and building users. Establish accessible and protected channels for reporting building safety hazards. Lastly, social approach. Review and expand housing subsidies and social welfare services for low-income and vulnerable groups. In conclusion, this fire is not merely an accident, but a symptom of complex and intersecting issues relating to housing inequality, urban management, and social welfare. Therefore, lasting prevention requires going beyond strict inspections to develop comprehensive solutions that integrate housing policy, social support, and urban regeneration strategies. I believe that Hong Kong society can use this tragedy as a catalyst for deep reflection and meaningful change. In addition, I'd like to emphasize that we should get lessons from this Hong Kong fire tragedy. There are similarities, such as skyscrapers and dense and old buildings in big cities like Seoul, New York, London, Tokyo, and so on.
I also hope that there will be changes after this as well. And I know things must have been very hectic, so thank you so much for taking the time to share your story with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we just spoke with someone who has had first-hand experience of the aftermath, giving us a clear picture of the mood in Hong Kong, how residents are processing the tragedy and what needs to change moving forward. And just like our Zoom interview said, unfortunately, high-rise disasters like this aren't only happening in Hong Kong. So can you give us an example, Key, of similar incidents that have happened elsewhere?
Sure. On the 10th, a separate fire incident occurred in Guangdong province in China, where a 4-story building caught fire, leaving 12 people dead. And it's not a recent one, but United Kingdom also suffered a similar thing. It was a Grenfell Tower that is standing in London back in 2017. It was a 24-story public housing tower, and it resulted in fatality of 72 people.
So that really shows how widespread these risks are. They're not limited to just one city or region. So now, are there any other cases that underline how common these high-rise fire tragedies have really become?
Yeah, there was another one to be highlighted this month in December 9th in Indonesia, Jakarta. An office building caught fire. It's a 7-story building, and it went up in flames, killing at least 22 people, including a pregnant woman, as workers were inside working during lunchtime. And the fire spread very quickly through the floors, and thick smoke made evacuation very, very difficult. Just to highlight one more, Arpora nightclub fire in Goa, India, December 6, 2025. A fire at Birch by Romeo Lane, which is a nightclub in Arpora, killed at least 25 and injured around 50. The blaze is believed to have started near the kitchen, and it was quite difficult to evacuate with so many people crowded into one space.
So clearly this is a pattern. So major cities are facing similar vulnerabilities. And here in South Korea, awareness around building safety has been rising too, right, Ki?
Sure. So South Korea has also a large number of high-rise apartment buildings, especially in Seoul, capital. Under the current law, buildings with 50 stories or higher are required to have designated safety floors where residents can shelter during a fire accident. However, buildings with 49 stories or fewer are not subject to this requirement, leading to criticism the so-called semi-high-rise buildings, such as the buildings that are 40, 30 stories tall, fall into the regulatory blind spot. So as a result, the importance of installing safety in safety areas has gained yet again renewed attention. A notable example occurred in Ulsan 5 years ago, where a major apartment fire took more than 15 hours to bring under control. But despite the scale of the blaze, no fatalities were reported, fortunately, largely because the building was equipped with a safety floor that allowed residents to evacuate safely. Still, this brought a controversy.
So you just told us what happens with high-rise buildings, which is more typical newer buildings. But what about older residential buildings? Like I live in an apartment that was built in the 80s. So are there any growing concerns there as well?
Yeah, absolutely. There are growing safety concerns with the aging apartment buildings. This year in Busan, a series of tragic incidents occurred in which young children died in the fire while the parents were away at work. And a common factor in all of these incidents is that they were old and lacked sprinkler systems, which are critical for early fire suppression. And in fact, the fire safety regulations did not require sprinkler installation in residential buildings built before 1990s. So yes, like Sujin, you mentioned, if it's something built in the 80s, it may not have fallen under that regulation. And in South Korea in particular, where a large proportion of the population lives in high-rise residential buildings, such as apartment buildings, anxiety is growing even further.
I mean, it's really heartbreaking that outdated infrastructure is still costing lives, especially when simple systems like sprinklers could change everything. So given all of this, so what kinds of safety measures or government actions are now being pushed forward here in Korea?
Well, so in response to this public anxiety following the Hong Kong disaster, the government has moved to implement emergency fire safety measures targeting high-rise buildings of 30 stories or higher. As part of this effort, the National Fire Agency conducted emergency safety inspection through the 12th. And to be more specific, under the law, like I said before, super high-rise buildings are defined as structures with 50 stories or more, or height of at least 200 meters. And underground link complex buildings refer to structures connected to subway stations or underground shopping arcades, and include facilities that are 11 stories or higher or have a maximum occupancy of 5,000 people or more, depending on their designated use. And in Seoul alone, there are 27 super high-rise buildings and 220 underground link complex buildings subject to these safety inspections. And what is more, authorities plan to strengthen education and training programs for both building management bodies and residents with the aim of improving preparedness and response in the event of a fire.
So I'm glad that there are immediate responses to this, like there's inspections, training, and a stronger push for accountability. But on the legislative side, are there any efforts underway to strengthen long-term safety precautions now?
Right. Discussions at the National Assembly have begun on the Basic Act on Life Safety, and this was actually proposed back in 2020, and the law would formally enshrine citizens' right to safety into legislation and be official. Although the need for such law has been highlighted after every major disaster, there has been little progress. Attention is now focused on whether the renewed discussions will finally lead to concrete results.
So that could be a major shift if we are able to finally move towards a legal framework that protects people before disasters happen, not after. So to close off our discussion, then to build a society where everyone feels safe, what do you think is truly essential moving forward?
Well, better late than never. You know, we always do things after things happen. Think about early 90s when the Seongsu-daegu Bridge and the Sampung Baekwasan Sampung Department collapsed. That was 30 years ago. Not all the disasters caused by either nature or human are foreseeable, but what can be done must be done, especially those old buildings must go through the safety inspections like we did before. So now it's time.
So like our Zoom interview, we said, this really affects a lot of cities all over the world. We see high-rise apartments everywhere. So do you have any other ideas about this?
Yeah, I believe that the only way to truly honor and console the victims of such disasters and their bereaved families too is to prevent these tragedies from ever happening again, going through all the logistical aspects and safety inspections and emotionally consoling them as well. But the causes of these incidents must be clearly identified and those responsible must be held accountable. And public awareness, like safety measures that we mentioned, fire drills, and and must be raised even further, and people need to be trained so that we can prevent this from happening again.
I agree. So these strategies really remind us that when it comes to safety, there's no such thing as good enough. The question now is whether the lessons learned will lead to real change, and as cities continue to grow, safety standards should also evolve with them, because in the end, the true measure of safety is whether lives are protected not after disaster, but before it happens. So that brings us to the end of today's episode of News Generation. But News Gen will be back tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Korea time with more stories and discussions. A big thanks to Ki.
Thank you.
And also Niall.
No problem.
And to our viewers, thank you so much for joining us today, and we hope you have the best day. We are
News Generation.